welcome back, everybody. Lizz Holmes here today, Female Athlete of the Year. Congrats on that, Liz.
Thank you.
So, whole athletic career to go over from HISA all the way up through varsity. So, let's start off with HISA.
So I started playing soccer in kindergarten. It was like when I first moved here, my parents were like, you need to do something. So my sister had played soccer where we used to live, so that's what I decided to do. And I played soccer up until like 12th grade. That's the longest sport I've ever played. Definitely like one of my favorite sports I've ever played too. Just like the team dynamic, and obviously like soccer is a really big thing in Hopkinton, especially like the girls soccer team. And then I also did karate, and my mom said, when I got to a brown belt, which is really annoying, but my mom said you can pick soccer or karate because I was doing a lot of things. And I go, okay, I guess I'll pick soccer, which in the long run worked out. And then I started to play basketball in 5th grade when my mom said, oh, you can join the Nordic team like your sister. No hate to any Nordic kids. I'm not a cold person, and I'm also pretty bad at downhill skiing, so thinking of doing Nordic kind of terrified me. And shout out to Steph Elric. We were finishing up soccer, and she was talking to her dad about basketball that season, and I was like, oh, Mom, that's what I can do. I'll be inside, I'll be nice and warm, I'll be with my friends. So I started doing that, and obviously I did that up until 12th grade as well. And also in 5th grade, or 6th grade, I played lacrosse for a year, and then I had told myself that I wanted to try both softball and lacrosse just because I never played a spring sport, and both my friends did both of them. So I played lacrosse for a year, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to try out softball. And I really liked both, so I was torn. And my 8th grade year, I was like, okay, I'm going to play both, just to decide what I want to do in high school. Well, then COVID happened. I ended up playing none of them. And my mom was like, okay, well, softball is the last thing you played. Why don't you stick with that? And it ended up working out pretty well. So, and I really enjoyed it.
So, you don't regret doing softball over lacrosse?
No, I do not. Sorry to all my friends who, like, they've tried to get me to switch back. I'm not gonna lie, I might have thought about it a couple times. It's a great sport. It's a lot more like my other sports that I play. Like, the other sports I play include a lot more running. But softball, like, the IQ, or like not IQ, but like the softball mind, you have to think a lot more about softball. There's a lot of strategy that goes into the game, which I think I really like. And it's like a team sport, but at the same time, it's like individual, because like you go up and you bat by yourself, and like you're in a set position out on the field. Shout out outfield. Infield terrifies me. But I really like it, so.
Yeah. So, coming back after COVID, what was your like initial reaction to what happened with COVID when it's like, okay, we're being sent home for a week and then we're going to figure everything out and it's all going to be fine?
Yeah, so actually during
8th grade, right?
Yeah, 8th grade during COVID, Skate had us still do softball games, which he would have us do like little write-ups and write our own stats of what a softball game would be. So I had the greatest games of my life in 8th grade because I made them up. But coming back after that, I really didn't know how to feel because we came back for soccer that fall. Going into your freshman year, first of all, it's terrifying for sports because you have to go try out with these older girls. You try out for 2 different teams. And coming into it with like masks and everything too was just a little terrifying, but I think picking softball that year after not playing lacrosse for a while was definitely the right choice. I definitely was like not as good at softball just because like I hadn't played it as long, but I think over time I got pretty good at it.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
You know,
all state. So just take us through each season and what the process was like when you were first coming back.
Yeah, so my freshman year, over the summer going into my freshman year, we had soccer like training at home. So I reached out to Coach Son. I kind of sucked up to him, I'm not going to lie. And I was like, what can I do at home to get better? I mean, I was bored. I was a bored kid at home like a lot of people were during sports. And I would just go outside and do little drills with my soccer ball. And I came into my freshman year not being like, I was really nervous, but not for the girls just because my sister was friends with a lot of the girls. And I like felt pretty confident in myself, but there was a lot of other good like young players on the team, especially. So that that season when I made varsity, it was like it meant a lot to me, and it kind of like showed that like if you work for it, you'll get what you want. But I ended up getting a concussion my like second game into that season, and I was out until playoffs. So, which is a little theme. I get hurt a lot, but that definitely made me want to come back to my sophomore year and be like, and show that I like earned a spot, because last year I couldn't really show anything because I was on the sideline. But same thing for basketball. I think basketball was pretty terrifying just because there was a lot of really good older girls on the team, and it was kind of a new group of girls that I would be playing with. Like I grew up playing with Hannah, Pesci, and like those people who were the grade above me, but there wasn't a lot of them. And shout out Shaylee. She's been like my basketball partner since day one, and that was the one year I had to go without her, and I think that was like terrifying for me because I was the only freshman as well. Like I was the only freshman there, and I think that was just super like intimidating being with a bunch of older girls, being by myself. But that was a really great season. Coach Roy definitely made me a better player. I learned a lot that season, especially like what not to do. The masks were it was also just interesting for basketball because for soccer we had like fans, but basketball you were just put in a gym and there was like nothing, so it was kind of depressing, but I was like, at least we get to play. And then softball, I had no high expectations whatsoever. I was like, I'm probably going to be making JV, and I did. So that kind of shows that like going in with a mindset of like, oh, I'm going to make the lower team, you'll probably make the lower team. But I loved my JV season. I had a great time, except for the fact that I had to play shortstop against Concord, and I wanted to cry. But other than that.
So you said infield's terrifying?
Yes. I think I played catcher for one game in HISA, and then I played shortstop for that one game. Never again did I ever play infield. Not once. And I think I got lucky because when I got to the varsity level for softball, which was like my sophomore year, I had some really great other like outfielders that made me a lot better. And it like gave like the people who were leaving were people out in outfield, so I didn't have to be put in the infield, which is great because I would quit if they put me in infield. So.
Okay, so what was the result from that season?
From that softball season?
Yes.
So being on the JV team my first year, I think that made me like a lot more comfortable with the game. My 7th grade year was my first year playing, and loved my mom, but she was like not expecting me to make the team just because it was like my first year. But that year on JV, I think I learned a lot just because the past 2 sports I had made varsity, and I felt like it kind of brought my ego down a little bit, which, you know, was really good because after that season, I like wanted to work for getting on varsity, and I wanted to be with like my friends because both Steph and Allie had been playing a lot longer than me, and they were swingers for that season. And I think being on JV made me a lot better in the long run. And like being on JV is great. I feel like people kind of hate on being on JV a little bit. They're like, oh, what's like the lower team? But really, it's like if you go onto a varsity team too early, and I kind of learned this for basketball just because we didn't have a JV team, so I kind of made varsity by default my freshman year. But like I think I would have really benefited from having a JV team just because going from the level of middle school to varsity in high school is a lot, and being young and not really knowing like what was like my place to fit in, I think being on a JV team for basketball would have been really beneficial for me. But softball, loved it, made some great friends, and the next season I came in and was a lot better than I was the season before. So I think I was finally ready for the varsity team, which was good.
So what do you feel like the key factors in the off-season were to making that change to improving?
So, in all honesty, I did some winter softball, but I think the fact that I played 2 other sports all the time was really beneficial to playing softball, or like the same with soccer and basketball. I feel like not sticking to one sport helped me a lot just because my body was like used to different things, and like in outfield, I used a lot of my soccer skills to do what I did. But I don't know, I kind of just went out there and tried my best. And I had this glove. I've had the same glove since I started softball. It was from Skate, and it was already like paper flat when I got it. And it has the perfect pocket. I kid you not, that was my key to success. If I had any other glove, I mean, I probably would have caught some, but some of the ones I caught, I don't think I would have without that glove. So I kept it from 7th grade up until 12th grade. Restrung it a couple times, but it was great.
What brand was the glove?
I honestly have no idea. The brand of the glove was like worn off. It was so old. I still have it because, I mean, hopefully I'll use it one day. And I always had to wear a batting glove under the glove because the padding was like so gone and it would like fall off my hand with that one. So I got a really nice tan line from that. But it was a great glove. I loved it. Did me good. So, yeah.
All right. Key takeaways from sophomore year?
So sophomore year, probably my biggest takeaway was that softball season. I mean, I had made the varsity team, and like that season, the softball team was really strong. Like we had a lot of really great players, and it was also just great to play like a final season with my sister's grade. Like there was a lot of great like leaders on that team. Shout out Callie Murdo, best to ever do it as a captain, but. And I think, like, soccer season that year, it was the last year we had won the championship, but I feel like it was just, like, a good year all around. And basketball was also great. I mean, everything was great my sophomore year. It's the easiest year of school, so the stress was none from school, but
Sure.
It was also, I think, coming in not being a freshman, I was a little bit more confident in myself, just because, like, you're not, like, the young kid who everyone's like, oh, you mess up, I'm going to, like, let you know about it. But it was also nice to kind of like talk to the freshmen too, be like, it's not as scary as you think, and like try and step up and be a leader even though like I wasn't a senior. So yeah, it was a pretty good year.
Okay, so at the end of that year for basketball, I know at least, so you won the championship for soccer.
Mm-hmm.
Basketball, you guys lost at Stevens in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And then what was softball?
Softball, I think we lost in quarters. Yeah, because we didn't make it to the Final Four that year, I don't believe. Because we made it to the Final Four last year. Yeah, because we were coming off of the softball team. I made it to the championship my freshman year. And then I think that next year we won prelims and then we lost in quarters. I forget who we lost to, though. They were a good team, but I don't really remember.
Okay, that's fine. So junior year, started junior year, you have the soccer team, and it's like, okay, I'm in charge of this now, sort of.
Yeah. The junior soccer was, we graduated basically our whole starting lineup. We didn't have a goalie, so Maddie Carmichael stepped up, and she did great. But it was also hard to take her off the field just because she was such a key component on the field, like playing as well. So it definitely was an adjustment. I'll say that. We thought it was going to be more of like a rebuilding year just because we weren't, like, not a lot of us had the experience that the past starters did. And, like, we lost a lot of good leadership from that senior class. But I think that was a pretty good season. I wouldn't say junior year was, like, my favorite, but it was a good season. We ended up losing in a really annoying final, a quarterfinal game. It was like the first time in the past, like, 5-6 years that our team hadn't even made it to the Final Four. Like the past 4 years we had won.
Close, though.
But it was just a brutal game against Stevens, and that's probably like my least favorite game ever, just because we also lost in PKs, and I think PKs are stupid. I think you should just play until you score. But that was probably one of like the hardest losses I've took, just because like it's literally that feeling of you're so close yet you're so far, and nothing was working for us that day. It was probably the worst game we had played all season, which you don't want to do in playoffs, but that's just how it was. But that honestly fueled our team a lot for the next season, even though we had lost a lot of players again.
So I remember going to that game, and I think I overheard, I think it was the ref, I could be wrong, saying, wow, this stinks. This is a great game, 0-0, and we're
Yeah.
going to penalty kicks. What a dumb way to decide it, but those are the rules.
Exactly.
So
Dumb.
I asked the same question to Sarah, and you obviously just answered that you would rather play overtime. Would you
100%.
rather do like an NHL style overtime where you have like fewer players on the fields or something like that, or just like go until like, because we were fighting darkness there at the same time, so it's hard
Yeah.
to kind of come up with an answer on that.
Honestly, I feel like, yeah, having less players would definitely make it end faster. Also, I feel like it's just a better way to end it instead of, like, oh, who can say this? Who can make this goal? Whatever. And, like, the pressure it puts on individual players on the team, I feel like just isn't fair. Like, I feel like if you continue playing in overtime, it's a team loss, which it's a team loss either way. But putting people in in the position to take PKs, there's people who will, like, take it really hard if they're the ones who miss that PK. And I feel like that's just not fair to a lot of players. So, you know, it is what it is, but I don't think the PK rule should even be a thing.
I agree with that. I
Yeah.
think overtime is much better. But
I agree.
we're America. We can reinvent everything.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so moving on to basketball. I know, going off your soccer season, you guys played well in the second half, and then similarly with basketball, like you had that close home game against Conan at the start of the year.
Yeah.
And that was super low scoring, good defense there, and just like kind of talk us through that whole season.
Yeah, that season was also, like, we had lost the great Callie Murdo. We were honestly terrified. But I think that season was a really good, like, learning season. It taught us to have a lot of grit just because we lost some really close games to some really close teams, and we coming back the next year, that's, like, those teams are the teams we knew we wanted to beat. And I think that was really beneficial, especially just because we did have a lot of older players. I think we graduated 7 seniors that year, but there was also, like, a lot of young talent who I think was kind of overlooked that season. Like, our starters were amazing. Like, everyone on the team was great. I just think that coming into the next year, the team was really, like, tight-knit just because of that past season. Like, we were like, we want to go in, we want to win. Losing Coach Roy was definitely, like, going into my senior year. It was definitely sad for me just because, like, I had known him, like, through the program since I was in, like, 7th grade, since I, like, started basketball. But I think him leaving was also, like, us wanting to show that we could, like, also succeed, like, without him. Love you, Coach Roy, but I think that was also just kind of a thing. Like, we were like, we want to show that, like, it's, like, we're a young team coming in, just losing our coach. Like, we kind of felt a lot like the underdogs. And we were like, we kind of just wanted to, like, prove everyone wrong.
So your junior year, we had that win in the first round. I think it was Newfound. And we were the 5 seed, which meant we took that drive to Prospect Mountain, who was the 4 seed.
That game was awesome.
That was one of my favorite. I think that was probably my favorite game that whole season, like of any sport that whole year.
Yeah, I think that was probably one of my worst games I've ever played, but like the team aspect, I think that was one of the greatest games we have ever played. Like, that game, it just really showed that our team, like, never gave up. Like, we wanted to go there and we wanted to win, and we played that out to, like, the last second, and it showed, like, it was just an insane game, especially, like, going up there. The crowd there was a little rowdy, I'm not gonna lie, but I think that also kind of fueled us. We kind of wanted to shut them up, but yeah, that was a great game. I kind of forgot about that until now, but loved that game. It was great.
Yeah, one of my favorite games. And then the Conant game.
Yeah, we had that stretch that year of we played, I'm pretty sure, like, Monadnock, Conant, and Stevens or something within 3 days.
That
and
was like early season, I think.
It was so bad. And they were all on the road except for Stevens, I think, was home. But our last game was against Conant, and it was at Conant, which the environment there, the gym's so small, the Conant fans are so into basketball that you go there, and it's already like it's a mental game from the beginning. And but those 3 games, honestly, we played really, really well, even though we were all exhausted by the end. I think that was just, I remember that being super fun just because we were, like, dying, but it was great. So
yeah, so I mean, Conant, they've been so good for so long, and you guys played really well in the second half. Honestly, they just had more talent that year, and that was the deciding factor.
Yeah, Conan just cranks out some really, really good basketball players, but, you know, this year we cranked out some good basketball players, so.
So, ending that season, saying goodbye to the seniors and saying goodbye to Coach Roy had to be one of the toughest things for you.
It definitely was. Like, I always pictured Coach Roy, like, being there for my senior season, just because, like, he had been there for a long time, but also just him being in the school system. I think, like, it was really hard to go in, especially, like, my senior year, not having him as a coach, because him and, like, Skate and him had always, those were the only two basketball coaches I ever knew. Like, that was it. And I think also, like, bringing in someone completely new was definitely terrifying, I think, for all of us. But I honestly couldn't have asked for a better coach for my senior season, for, like, having Coach Mahoney. I think of anyone who could, like, come in and take over Coach Roy's spot, like, he was definitely, like, the best choice. He just came in and was like, I want to come in and start where he left off, and that's just what he did. Like, he got super involved in all the programs, reaching out to all the young players, which I remember Coach Roy doing just because I would play, like, summer league with Shaylee when she was in 7th grade and I was in 8th grade, and we got to go play with all the older girls, and we're like, oh my god, this is so cool. But it was definitely hard to also just say goodbye to, like, Hannah and Elise and all of them who, like, I had played sports with forever. But I really enjoyed my senior season, even though I came into it being a little negative just because of, like, all the talent we had lost the past 2 years. I was like, this is going to suck. It didn't. There was a lot of good came from my senior year, which was great.
So, finishing up your junior year with softball, that year you guys made it to Final Four and you lost to Prospect Mountain, who was just, like, crazy good.
Yeah.
And not only that, but also came the announcement that you were going to be losing yet another coach with Meserve.
Yeah. So Mr. Meserve actually told Steph, Allie, and I first before he told, like, really anyone else. He basically pulled us into his office and was like, before he even met with the team, he pulled us in there because we were the only underclassmen on the varsity team that year. And he was like, I wouldn't want to leave, like, the team to anyone but you guys. Like, we were the middle. We were, like, catcher, pitcher, center fielder. And it was definitely, we were really sad to see him go just because, like, he was a great coach. He was super understanding with a lot of things. Like, he really made it more like a family, I feel like, for softball, which I feel like is why I loved it so much. And he was, like, one coach who didn't get super mad. Like, I love my other coaches, don't get me wrong, but his way of coaching was a lot more nice than some others. Like, I fuel off people yelling at me and being like, you need to do this, you need to do that. But some girls, like, it really, like, makes them shut down rather than makes them want to keep playing. And I feel like that's why the softball team was so good. He kind of, like, was positive all the time, which was great. And our junior year, or, like, my junior year, that Final Four game was insane. Like, I'd never really played under the lights for softball before. And playing up in Plymouth was just, like, such a cool experience. Sad that we lost, but we lost to a really good team. And we actually had a pretty good game against them.
In the rain, too.
Yeah, it was bad weather, but it was great bonding for all of us. Like, it was probably one of the most fun playoff games I've ever played in, so I liked it.
All right, cool. So moving on to senior year, obviously we'll talk about the summer league and getting to know Coach Mahoney for the first time, and then just like, oh crap, 2 out of my 3 coaches who I've had are not going to be around my senior year.
Yeah, so summer season I was actually gone for most of it, just because I had gone and done a summer program that year. But I came in at the end, and the girls were like, we like the coach so far, but he is completely different from Coach Roy. Like, their coaching styles are completely different, and he's just like he's just a fun, energetic, positive guy, and I feel like this year that was really what we needed on the basketball team. Like, we were coming into it being like, oh, like, we lost 7 players last year. We have a whole like young team, and it was like, oh, we're gonna have a rebuilding year. We're probably not. I'm sorry, but we said we're probably not gonna do that good. But I think that's also just kind of what what I said earlier. The older players, I feel like kind of overshadowed like the talent that was kind of hidden on the teams, and I feel like this year it really showed that. Like a lot of the teams I played on this year were really young teams, like the softball team. We didn't have any juniors. It was us, 3 seniors, and the rest were sophomores and freshmen. And same for basketball. Basketball was just rough. Well, we can talk about that separately just because of how the season went. But
yeah, let's get into soccer.
Yeah, so the soccer season, that wasn't really a season we were too, not like worried about, but I feel like the pressure of winning again was finally off of our backs, and we were like, we're just going to go out there and have a good time and hopefully like have a good season with this young team. And this year was honestly like the most fun I've had playing soccer. I think it was because like that stress was gone and there was no more like feuding between girls just because like we wanted to just go out there and have a good time. And like the expectations for us weren't through the roof like they were the past couple years. But it was really great to be a senior. Like I feel like playing into that like leadership role and being there for like the younger players. I got really close to some of the freshmen, and it was just great to see it from like that perspective of you being a senior and the younger players. It really showed how like some of the seniors who I played with like made me who I was, and I kind of wanted to be that for some other like younger players as well. But we ended up making it to the semifinals, and we lost to Guilford, but whatever. We don't need to talk about that.
Hey, Guilford.
Yeah. But that game was just, that was a rough game. That was probably my least favorite playoff games ever. Not because of the team or anything, just because it was another one of those, like, we lost by 1, and it was one of those games where we totally, like, the goal that they had gotten was just not even that good of a goal, and we had so many opportunities, but in the end, like, we just couldn't get anything to go. I mean, Guilford is a great team. They have some really, like, athletic girls, and they go out there and I feel like want it just as much as we do. So whenever we play them, it's always a good game, no matter what sport we're playing. But
yeah, I can't stand Guilford, but that's okay. It's my least favorite team in all of the divisions. Shout out Gavin Clark.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, maybe I'll talk to him later this summer. Anyway, so moving on, going into the basketball season.
Mm-hmm.
Just the approach to that, the energy in that alumni game was crazy. Because
oh my gosh, yeah.
Night before Thanksgiving, maybe my favorite Hopkinton traditions up there with like, graduating in the barn and the parades and all that stuff. But like,
there's some good ones.
That is really special to see like everybody come back. It's just got the awesome feel of a family reunion and everybody checking in, see how everyone's doing. That game, you guys were like, okay, let's go, let's bring it on.
Yeah, that game definitely was a lot of fun just because I got to play against the girls who I, like, grew up playing with. And it's also really great to see some, like, those stars come back from a while ago. No offense, but it was like when my dad was in high school. And it's just really great to play against them just because of how good they were then and how good they are now. And it's great that they, like, want to come back and play in Hopkinton again, so I loved it.
Yeah, and then Coach Mahoney was talking about like the energy for that game was just like so insane. He's like, if this is an alumni game, what's the regular season gonna be like?
Yeah, and he was like that for our jamboree too. In our jamboree we played Kearsarge, and it was literally a 20-minute game, and I don't think Coach Mahoney has ever seen such a like physical game of basketball before. And like the crowd, he's like that literally felt like a championship game.
Foreshadowing.
I was gonna say, which later in the season he'd learn that that's what it was gonna be, but always like playing them, having those like rivalry games are always great to get you like pumped up for the season, but also just like during the season anyways. So yeah, basketball was a great season.
Absolutely. So you guys started off like really, really good, 5-0, and I think for you guys, I think in the preseason poll you were ranked 5th, and then when there was Keegan St. Cyr and Katie Brown tearing their ACLs. You guys could have, even people said initially, at 5, with everyone healthy, they should be lower, 7 or 8. And then 2 ACLs. You guys must be like 13 and barely make the playoffs and get, the crap beat out of you in the first round. Every week somebody's out with,
I had COVID for like the 3rd year in a row.
Yeah, COVID, just common cold, the bird flu, you name it. Anybody had it.
Yeah, it was definitely a season where we felt like everything was against us. We started off so great. Like, I had seniors come back and join me. Katie, I hadn't played with since we were in middle school, and I love her on the basketball court because of how aggressive she is. Like, she's just, like, one of the most athletic people I think I've ever met, and her defense, like, terrifies me. And then Keegan coming back from Tilton was definitely, she honestly, like, surprised me a lot just because I knew she hadn't played basketball, and she kind of just came out and was, like, leading scorer, she's also one of, like, the most athletic people I've ever met as well. And having those two come back for my senior year so I wouldn't be the only one was, like, honestly a great feeling to have them both there. Sadly, their seasons were cut short, but a lot of our success, I feel like I owe to them just from the beginning, but also, like, how our team wanted to then win it for them. Like, a lot of our season was, even though they can't play, like, we want to make sure that we show them that we want to win for them. So, it was good.
Right, so as like the senior leader, you have to help out with a lot of these younger players who haven't been in a situation of just being thrown in because, like, we don't have anybody else, you go.
Yeah, no, exactly. So many girls on the team this year, they stepped up in huge roles. Like, their first real years being on varsity, I don't think a lot of them expected to end being varsity starters or just be put in that position in general. But I think, like I said, there was a lot of talent on our team that I feel like had been overlooked or they hadn't really been given the chance to get better. And I think this year was definitely a year for girls to show that they're, like, super talented in the game of basketball. And I feel like Coach Mahoney giving everyone equal playing time, I feel like in the beginning really helped those girls when it came to those big games where we were down Katie and Keegan. And, like, everyone just improved so much this year that it was really great to see just because, especially it was a year, I mean, we had made it to the championship, which no one would have expected in the beginning of the season. But it was definitely one of the best seasons I had ever played. It was just, like, we were a really tight-knit group, and everyone, like, they wanted to show up and be there, and I feel like a lot of that was because of Coach. He always just had, like, a positive attitude. We would go, if we were, like, losing at halftime, he would come in and he would be like, going into the next quarter, like, you just win it quarter by quarter. He never really had anything bad to say, and he was always just there to pick us up instead of really, like, scream at us and be like, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. He never focused on the negatives, and I feel like for girls especially helps. Like, I feel like for guys, sometimes it's easier to get them pumped up by yelling at them. And I feel like for girls, it's really not. Like, a lot of us kind of just shut down and we're like, well, screw you. If you don't want to be here, I don't want to be here. Like, if you're going to be yelling at me, why do I even try? But,
it is
it's
interesting
totally
to see, like, the locker room difference between, a Pat Roy and a Mike Mahoney versus, like, a Matt Miller who's in there. I'm not going to... Love you, Coach Miller. I know you watch most of these. The way you motivate people is very impressive. I'll tell you that.
Which makes sense for, like, I feel like for guys' teams, like, they feel off they're like, oh, you think I can't do this? Watch me. I'm going to do it. But it was definitely just, like, a fantastic environment to be in. So many of the girls, I was so proud of them for what, like, especially just, like, how our season ended. Going out at, like, the end of the season, I was confident going into the championship game just because I knew of, like, the talent that we had. I mean, we did have Shaylee Murdo, so like, what else do you need? But I feel like going into such a game with so much pressure, missing a lot of your, like, key players, I feel like we played, it definitely was not the best basketball game we ever played, but we went out there, like, it was as a family. It was definitely one of, like, the best teams I had ever been a part of, so.
I'll work back. So we're in a situation, let's just set it up, final week of the season, entering 13-1, locked up up two spot, senior night, home against Mascoma, does not matter for the standings whatsoever. If you lose, it doesn't matter. If you win, it doesn't matter because either way, you're going to be a 1 or 2 seed, and the deciding game for that would be Thursday night against St. Thomas, right? So that was the most bizarre senior game, as I talked about with Keegan. Like, Keegan couldn't play, Katie couldn't play, you were really sick, and then Viola played a little bit, but it was just bizarre.
Yeah, definitely. That senior night really showed what our season was like. I woke up that morning with a fever of 103, and saddest day of my life. Like, I hate missing sports in general, but missing, like, your senior game definitely was rough. Especially, I know for them, too. Like, them being able to be there but not being able to play was also definitely hard. But I think the girls went out there and did the best that they could. I feel like that day was also just, like, super emotional knowing that none of the seniors were really going to play. I feel like that really took a toll on kind of just, like, the motivation a lot of the girls had. It was kind of just, like, a depressing day. It was like, it's your senior night, it's supposed to be fun, no seniors are playing. But I think we made the best of it. Even though we lost that game, the girls, they didn't get down on that. We went into play St. Thomas, and we held in there for a pretty long time. And a lot of that was just because of the experience those younger girls had been getting due to us older players being out. And so I think that was just a really good way to enter into the playoffs, especially coming that close to being St. Thomas, who was, like, a really good team. Little did we know we wouldn't even have to play them again, but it is what it is. So
yeah, that was an exciting game. I enjoyed the energy of going into that game.
Yeah.
And either way, we knew, hey, we're okay. We have a first round bye. So first round bye, and then Monadnock, we have one game to get into the Final Four. We have a home game to get into the Final Four.
Yeah.
And if we win this, we're back there. And they had been through a lot. They just won a war against Stevens, not to mention all the challenges they underwent during the regular season.
Yeah, I think that game we wanted to win, but it was, considering what had happened to them earlier that season with them losing their coach, it was definitely hard to go in there with, like, the full mentality of, like, oh, we want to crush these guys, especially because, like, their last game that they ever played with their coach was at our home court.
Yeah.
And we knew, like, we wanted to win, but it was also one of those games where it was, like, we kind of felt bad. Not that we felt bad, it was just, like, it was really hard to get motivated to be, like, we want to crush them, especially considering that it was, like, the last game there. But we went out there, and I think that was honestly just us playing good basketball. It wasn't really us being like, oh, we want to win. It was, we went out there, and honestly, I think that's the calmest we have ever played. I feel like people's nerves weren't really there, even though considering what was on the line. I feel like we went out there, and honestly, I think we just had fun because we were okay if we had lost, just because we would have been super, like, happy for that team. I feel like any other team, we just wouldn't want to lose because we wouldn't be happy for them, but we love, like, Monadnock always comes and brings in a good game, a good fight. There's some really great girls on that team, so I was just happy we got to play them. So.
Right, so you move on. That was a super exciting just post-game celebration with everything. And then we move on. We got Winnisquam, talk to Missouri after the game. Okay, so, 2 seed versus 3 seed at Bow, and you have Lauren McDonald versus Shaylee Murdo, the 2 candidates for Player of the Year, which was really interesting. I remember when that game started, I was on the bench with you guys doing stats. Halfway through the first quarter, I get this text message from Coach Roy. Lauren McDonald's really good. And then Shaylee comes out, and she just, like, drains a bunch of threes. So,
like
I'm
Shaylee
doing
Murdo
stats.
does,
So I take a minute to text him back at halftime or the end of the first quarter, and I said, yeah, so is Shaylee.
Yeah, no, exactly. That was, going into that game, I think that was probably one of the games that we were, like, the most nervous for, just considering I had never played Winnisquam in any sport or we might have played them in softball, but any sport of, like, my high school career, I had never really played them. I didn't really, like, know anything about them, and seeing their record and seeing how good they were and, like, the points this girl was putting up every game, we were like, oh my gosh, like, this is going to be a Conant game with, like, their star players, and, like, just them scoring everything. And I think we really just I was not expecting the result of us winning that game just because the beginning, the Winnisquam fan section, was really getting in our heads. The warm-ups looked so bad. It just looks like we saved it for the actual game because the girls went out there and literally left it all on the floor, and it paid off. So
What was it, like 51-34, something like that?
yeah, it was a lot bigger of a deficit than we thought it was going to be, but yeah, that was the game when I went down a little early, and I think that even though I wasn't playing, I'm a good basketball player. I wouldn't say I'm a great basketball player. I feel like I'm more of a motivator on the team than anything else. I try and just pick girls up and be like, you're okay. You make a mistake, you forget about it, and you just move on. And I feel like even though I wasn't able to play, being on the bench was still great. I was there, I was supporting, and we ended up winning by a lot, so it's great.
That was awesome. That post-game celebration, that was the only tough part, was that you got hurt, and we knew that was not good. That was the only thing that was a negative. Other than that was just incredible.
It was amazing. It was a great environment to be in, especially us winning. The student section, I think, was the loudest our student section has ever been, just because of how talkative the other student section was. But it was a crazy good environment to be in, especially coming off the year before that, when we had lost a game to Conant there, and it was honestly probably the worst basketball game any of us have ever played in our lives. But I think coming off of losing there, we were like, we don't want to lose here again. That was a terrible feeling, and that's just what the girls did. So, yeah.
Yeah. So going into the championship at Keene State, that was incredibly exciting, and foreshadowing, as you mentioned before, the whole Hopkinton Kearsarge, that was you couldn't script that any better. We want Hopkinton's Kearsarge. Like you mentioned, for scrimmages, it's just it's a great, small school rivalry. We draw a lot of fans for all those games, and you had their roster. They had Tessa Marinello, Ava Shapiro, those players, and it was okay, this looks pretty even. I'll tell you this, the day before the game, I was a little nervous because I heard how bad your injury was, and that was tripping me up a little bit, because I was if you're healthy, I feel better about that then. Yeah,
that injury was kind of a freak accident. I mean, there's a video of it, and I originally went down and was oh, my ankle, even though I felt a pop in my knee. But anytime you tell an athletic trainer something is wrong with your knee, they're going to be you are sitting, you're not doing anything.
Yep.
And I think it was honestly kind of good that I did that, because the other team, Kearsarge, had no idea that it was my knee. They just thought it was my ankle. And it ended up being a lot more of a severe injury than I had thought. I have a pretty high pain tolerance, so I didn't think it was too bad. Didn't end up being great, but I was happy I was able to get into the championship game at least a little bit, even though I literally did nothing. I was happy I was able to get on the floor and just
you got 4 rebounds. I have the stat sheet somewhere.
Couldn't even jump. Wow, that's great. 4 rebounds is insane. But it was great to just get out there with the girls one more time, especially in an environment like that. That's the best thing you could wish for, to go out your senior year. I mean, obviously a win would have been great, but honestly, just that season with everything we had dealt with, just getting to the championship, not even in the beginning of the season, we weren't even expecting to really make playoffs. And I think it was just a great way to go out just with those girls. I'm going to miss them a lot next year, but they're going to do great.
But yeah, they're going to be awesome next year.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's also really good contenders. St. Thomas is coming back, and
St. Thomas is going to be good
with the same starters that they had before, minus the one. And Kearsarge is going to come back. They might not have their big, but they're still going to be pretty good. They have some pretty good girls on that team, and Monadnock is also one to look out for, because they got that Kanan and Shaylee duo over there, so they have their own Shaylee. So
that's true.
You know how that is, but
it's helpful to have a Shaylee on your team.
It really is, especially when it comes to basketball.
So I remember that game. That was one of the most emotional and special things I think I've been a part of, just doing the sports media thing. So appreciate you guys very much for helping me celebrate my birthday that day. That was very cool of you.
Yes, I know we lost on your birthday, but
Yeah, back-to-back years, too. You lost to Conant the year before.
oh my gosh, that's so bad.
Yeah.
It's just a curse, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely not like the result we had hoped for,
Yeah.
but considering what we had been through, it was a great first year for Coach Mahoney and a
Yeah.
great last year for me. So.
But it was incredible how tough you were. I remember, I've covered a lot of Hopkinton sports. I think I've covered more of your games than anybody else because you've been so involved with it the
Yeah.
past few years, obviously, all of high school. And so there's that. I'd say, like, some of my favorite memories is just, like, there was a game, I think it's soccer, and you got hurt your ankle, and then I was at the cage hitting the next morning, and I saw you walking on crutches to practice, like determined that you were going to do that.
Yeah.
Determined you're going to play in the state championship game for basketball this past year. That's really impressive.
I'm also just I'm very prone to getting hurt. You can ask all my coaches that. I think I have not been hurt a single season my entire high school career, whether it was a concussion, which I got in the Kearsarge game this past basketball season. I was playing pickup basketball at Methodius during soccer season when I completely messed up my ankle and showed up in a boot the next day to practice. Coach Zahn was not very happy with me about that, but there was a lot of injuries really like sucked my high school career. Like my sophomore year, I had some back problems that were more like genetic rather than something I could really fix or even do to myself. But I think it taught me a lot to be resilient, and it really just showed that I really did love sports. I loved playing with my girls, and I was determined to get out there as fast as I could, no matter what the doctors told me. So it taught me a lot, getting injured a lot, but it was great.
Yeah. So moving on to softball. This is it. This is, everything with Hopkinton. And you're starting the season with a really crappy knee injury.
Yeah, I was out for, I think, the first 5 games this softball season.
That's why you guys started 0-5.
No. It was definitely a rough start to the season, not just because we were losing, just because I couldn't do anything about it. It was just a hard season, I feel like, for softball too. We got a new coach again. Even though Miss Kovar, she was our assistant coach last year, she was a great softball player back in the day at Hopkinton and at Colgate too. But I think it was just like a really intimidating season, not just for like the younger players, but for us older players as well. Like we had to be those leaders on a team that was really young, and I feel like we all were kind of like doubtful in the beginning of the season. Like we were a lot more negative than we were positive, which showed in the beginning of the season. It's definitely hard, especially like your senior year, to go into a season injured, and I was hoping to be back a lot sooner than I ended up coming back. It was one of those injuries where I couldn't really just like go out there and be fine. It was like I kept re-injuring myself, which was also really frustrating. But our team, we weren't really expecting to make playoffs in the beginning of the season just because of how it had been going. But all of a sudden, it just seemed like our team like flipped a switch, and we were going out there and we were winning all these games, and it was really great to see like just girls go from being super negative to then being super positive and actually wanting to be there.
You're too humble to say this, but I'll say you started out 0-5. Liz comes back, they win 5 in a row.
Yeah, I feel like maybe a little bit was me playing, but I feel like a lot of it was also I was in a better mood. I feel like I came back and I was finally positive just because I could play, and you don't realize it that much when you're being positive that it spreads to other players, but you do realize it when you're being negative. Like it definitely is something that that's probably one of the best traits you could have as an athlete, is to show up and be there for your team, not really like for yourself. Like I was down and upset because I was injured, but it was really like I should have been in a better mood just for the team, which I was after I wasn't injured anymore. But things really turned around, and it was a good way to end my season. I got really close with some of the girls, especially having a young team, you kind of have to get really close just because we were like 2 years older than most of the girls on our team. And with a new coach, I think it was a little rough start too, just because of Coach Kovar and Coach Meserve's teaching or like coaching styles were complete opposite.
Yes,
like
definitely.
complete opposite. And I feel like that was kind of hard for some younger players just because Coach Kovar was such a good softball player that her softball IQ was like really high, and then some girls like the simpler stuff, they needed it to be explained, and she didn't really understand that at the beginning of the season. But as we went on, she started to realize that's what she had to do, and I think that was also a big factor in like the success we had by the end. But it was a great last season. So
Female Athlete of the Year. I'll just say it. I think there was nobody close. I think we knew for like 2+ years that you absolutely deserved it.
I appreciate it.
So what's that mean?
It meant a lot to me, especially just how much Hopkinton had gave me when I was younger in sports, and over the past couple years I had gotten involved in coaching, and I got to see some of my younger players at graduation, and it was really great just to see like the difference that you make. Coaching is probably something that I honestly enjoyed a lot more than playing. It was just kind of like bringing in like me knowing the sport to like teaching it was just like great to see like all these young kids. I also love young kids. Like everyone says I should be a teacher just because of like how I am with younger kids. Love those kids for 3 hours every week. Could not do that for 5 days of my every week of my life. But I think winning that award really kind of solidified it for like my sports career for me. Like I would show up and I wanted it every time I was there, and I was happy that like other people recognized that. But it definitely meant a lot to me, especially just because like a lot of the players I had looked up to in the past had also gotten it, and I'm like, I want to be just like them. So I'm hoping that that's how some players are now with me. But I feel like it's definitely like I loved my sports career, but I feel like it's also just like the impact that I made through it was like way more fulfilling than like any success I had on the field.
Yeah.
It was more like what I could do for people off. So it was a great season, or like career. I
Okay,
guess.
so we'll get into your future. University of Denver. How'd you settle on that decision?
It was 10 o'clock at night on a random Wednesday, and so I was deciding on UNH and Denver. I love it out west. I was born out there, and I had lived there for some of like my younger life. I don't remember a lot of it, but when we visit, I absolutely love it, and the campus and everything, and the sports environment there is insane. There's no football team or baseball or softball team, which for me is sad because of how much I love softball. But the hockey there,
Yes.
top notch. And as you know, they won the championship, the national championship this last season, and the environment there is just, it's so great. Everyone's so positive, and like my mom says, some people here are really cold, not super friendly, but out there, it's just everyone is there to have a good time and is super friendly and super talkative, which I feel like I get from my mom. Like, that's kind of how I am, and I'm excited to just be with, like, a bunch of those people, so.
Sports is great in Denver. Boston still has way better parades. Just have to say that.
That's a good point.
No, look at the Twitter. Like, look at the Denver parade. You have the Nuggets going down the street versus jam-packed in Boston a week and a half
I
ago.
100% agree when it comes to, like, those type of sports, like, professional. Boston's top tier. I wanted to go to the Celtics parade, and I couldn't this year, but it's okay. They'll win it again another time. But, yeah, going out there, I'm really excited just because, like, I'm a lot of, like, an outdoorsy person, too, so there's a lot to do out there, and I'm excited to see what it holds for me. I might try out for the club soccer team. I don't know, the elevation out there is really high, and I have bad asthma, so we'll see how that goes. But if anything, I want to, like, stay involved in sports, whether it's, like, coaching kids there, not at the school, but, like, in, like, the communities around there, and just maybe getting involved, like, as a manager or something for the club soccer team. You never know. Less running for me. But I'm excited to see what the future holds, so.
So for you now, just talk about, like, studying and where you're thinking career-wise. Don't have to have it all figured out at 18.
Yeah, so I went in undeclared because, like you said, you don't have to figure it all out at 18. I've always loved the medical field, but I've also always loved engineering. I'm definitely a STEM girl. English, I'm terrible at reading, not great at writing. So that was really where it was at for me. And like biomedical engineering, which is what originally was my major, what my major was going to be. And then I took calc this year. We don't need to talk about it, but I think that really opened my eyes to what a lot of engineering is. And I also took intro to law this year, which made me really interested. I've always been interested in like criminology and like forensic sciences and that kind of stuff. So it's either looking like a engineering route or a forensic sciences route, but we'll see. You never know.
So after school, you gonna live out there forever? You gonna come back here and put 6 championship banners up in the gym?
There's like their percentage for kids who stay out there is like 87%, but I feel like I'm secretly a homebody. I kind of love it here, but I do love out west, so if I do end up living there, I'll definitely come back and visit all the time with my parents. I'm third generation Hopkinton kid. My whole family lives here except for my mom's side, and we'll see. No promises, but
Anything to add? Any advice or stuff like that?
definitely just like coaches look for players who aren't there for themselves. Go out there and just like if you show them that you're trying your hardest, they'll see that. Maybe reach out with an email, suck up to them a little bit. But no, if you put the work in, you'll do great. Especially here in Hopkinton, it's a small town, but it's a great town to be part of like a sports community. Everyone comes out for the games, and it's just a great environment to be a part of. So.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate being a supporter of the show
Of
since
course.
very early on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure.
Mom is your number one fan. My mom.
Yeah.
She loves it.
I think that's true. So I'm sure that, this channel is going to get to a point where, we're going down the street and we got a big, 100,000 subscriber plaque and you're out there with
100%.
You're winning state championships for the Hawks or you're winning state championships in Denver as a coach. So
Never know.
appreciate everything. Thank you, Liz.
Of course. Yeah, thank you.